Hey class, here we are back with our value scales. We are going to explore three different types of value systems here. We have hatching. We're going to do value swatches, so that'll be individual values in each one of those squares. And then a shading or value blending, where we go a smooth blend all the way across. You'll see that each one of these squares corresponds with a value range. So this here is 100, and that means 100% black, like the darkest you can make it. And then it goes from 90, 80, 10, 70, 60, 50, all the way down to 0, which is just the white of the paper. We have our midtone 50% here. So let's start with hatching. With hatching, we are going to use lines that are very close together. And with hatching, the more dense the line, the darker the value reads. So if I press very hard here, my lines are very close together, then I get a good dark value. We could make this even darker by adding what's called a cross hatch. And a cross hatch means we just go 45 degrees or 90 degrees perpendicular to our previous line, and we make lines that go across here, essentially cross hatching that value swatch, and that will make it even darker. So to start making your swatches lighter, you will go add more space in between your lines. And it will appear lighter. Do go ahead and make them go 45-degree angles in each square. I think that just helps understand it a little bit better, and it doesn't confuse yourself then with the vertical lines. So be sure to do it at an angle here. I'm going to make this a little bit darker since it is 90, and I'm just going to add that crosshatch here as well to make that a little bit darker. And then I'll go ahead and then continue with my 80. And try to make it a little bit lighter. Now, I'm using a 6B pencil, so my pencil is getting pretty dull. So I'm going to always make sure I keep it nice and sharp, because that'll really help my accuracy as well. So I think I need to add a little bit more cross-hatching here still, since I'm up here in the very dark value range. That looks a little bit better. I might go ahead and reinforce those just a little bit more here. Okay, so now I can continue on to 70. And I will just keep making my lines a little bit further apart. Trying to do my best to keep everything in the box. You know, we're going to color inside the lines here on this project here. So I'm going to continue adding my crosshatch. And I think it could still get just a little bit darker, so I'm going to add a little bit more in there. Okay, now I'm going to continue on. When we start getting down into these midtone ranges, it gets very difficult because a lot of these values start to read very similarly in this 60 to 30% zone. So do your best to try and see how well you can get that to appear lighter as we continue our way across. So I just keep making my lines a little bit further apart, and then I add the crosshatch in here to help get that to be 50%. Eventually I'll probably stop doing the crosshatch, but I think I can still get a little bit more value subtlety there with the crosshatch. I'm also pressing a little bit lighter each go around here too. Okay, so there we have our hatching complete, all the way from as pretty much as dark as we can go to getting lighter across. Sometimes I'll jump back in here and fix it if things seem a little too close. One way I can also make this swatch darker is I can add a third hatch by going again in one more sort of 45-degree angle. So I could add a vertical hatch to that as well, and it would make it even darker. See how much darker it just got. So depending on how you're using hatching, there's a lot of great ways to build hatching into value. Okay, so now let's go down to our values here. The values take a little bit longer because you're filling them in more, so just take your time. 100 is pretty easy, so I like to start there. 100 is easy because I just got to fill it all the way in. And now I recommend using small sort of oval or circular motions to fill this in, and try to stay regular and systematic in your application of the charcoal. If you draw around in a lot of different directions, it will look choppy and it won't be that smooth. So try little circular motions and just really building this up. And I'm using my 6B pencil here because I want to use that nice soft pencil to make this nice and dark. Now I'm just going to kind of keep working it until it's nice and smooth. And nice and even across the entire value swatch. Now I used a lot of, my pencil got pretty dull there, so I'm going to go ahead and sharpen it again. Keep it nice and sharp. Now I just will continue the same process, but I'm going to lighten my pressure. So I'm going to press a little less hard, right? Little bit more soft. But I'm still doing the same movement, little ovals that help make things nice and smooth. And I'm going to gradually build up my 90% value, because if I go too dark, it's harder to erase. But if I start light and build darker, then it's easier to, make it darker. Right? I can always make a swatch darker. A little harder to make it lighter because then you have to use your eraser. So if I'm if I ease my way into this and slowly build it up over time, then I can make sure I do it right the first time. Hey, that looks pretty good. I might see if I can get this 100 a little bit darker, and then that's going to give me a little bit more range than for my subsequent values. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So now I'll come and continue the same process until into the 80 degree or 80% gray. So we're still getting it. We're still in the dark family here. This is all the darks. I'd say the darks probably go from 100% to 80, maybe into 70, depending on how you're using it. And then you get into the mid-tone family, probably from 60 to 40 or 30, and then that 0 to 20 is definitely your lights, 0 to 30 perhaps. Okay, so this is looking almost a little too close to my 90, so I think I might need to darken up my 90 just a little bit. There we go, that's a little bit better. Okay, so now I can go over and continue on to my 70. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here because you don't need to watch me fill in these swatches all the way through. I think you got it. So why don't you go ahead and get started and start working on your value swatches, and I'll join back up here in just a minute. Okay, you can see I have now finished my value swatch across. Some of these lighter values are a little hard to see here on the camera. One of the things you can do here to help with this is you can kind of use your different pencils, right? So I have a 6B here, so I can use my 6B from like here, to about here. And then I started then using my 2B from about here down to about here. And then I started using my 2H. So my 2H went from here to here, and then this stays as the white of the paper. One thing you might encounter is when you use the harder pencil, like the 2B, when you use the 2B or the 2H, you might find that the harder pencil pushes more into the texture of the paper, and then it is perceived as darker than the darker values. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll just take that harder pencil and come back over my darker values just so I push into that texture of the paper a little bit. And that'll help smooth some things out, even, and make it appear more the value that it is. Because what's happening, right, is it's similar to what's happening with the hatching, is when we see more white of the texture come through, we visually perceive the value as a little lighter. Okay, so now let's go ahead and give ourselves a fresh sharpen here. Make sure we've got everything nice and sharp. That really helps, and not always keep a sharp pencil. And from here, we're going to do a shading. So we're going to do an unbroken transition from 100% black all the way through all of the grays and midtones, all the way to our lights. So that way we're going to practice trying to get some smooth transitions between our values. And this is pretty tough because we want to try and keep it consistent all the way through with very smooth transitions between the values. So you're going to have to just sort of slow down and take your time, right? One thing about art is it helps us to teach us how to slow down. We can't just rush through life and miss out on all the good things when we just slow down and take our time to look. So now that I've kind of filled in the 100% area, I'm going to start lightening up my pressure to bring it over here into the 90. Now I'm probably going to have to come back in and tweak some of this and add some more darks as I go, But that's okay. We're just going to work our way down there, and remember, just always go a little lighter than you think, because you can always add more dark values to it. Harder to lighten it back up, right? Because we are using, we would have to use our eraser then. So I accidentally went a little too dark there. So I messed up. I've been doing this for a long time, and I still practice this skill all the time because it's quite a challenge. I like to tell my students when they're, in those classes where they're taking notes and doodling, just practice your value transitions. And then that will really help you build your value skill sets a little bit more. Now, I might be able to go back in and fix that a little bit I think I did. I was able to fix that, so that's good. A lot of you all might think, you'll encounter this a lot in your art. You'll think, I made a mistake, oh my God, now I got to fix it. But for most of the time, you can fix those mistakes by just going back into them. You don't have to erase them. You don't have to doubt or make a big story about how you're no good of an artist. It's really just about, trusting the process and knowing that mistakes are going to happen, and that's going to help you learn. So I might go ahead and feather this out a little bit with my 6B. And then I think I'm going to come back in with my my 2B here. Technically mine's a 3B, and I'm going to start adding these mid-tone values using my slightly harder pencil, because that's going to help make all of this work a little bit better. I know a lot of good artists that could do this whole thing with just the 6B, but I think it's good to get used to using these different pencils a little bit. And now again, because this pencil's harder, look, it's creating less, it's filling in the texture of the paper a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and feather that into my other values here as well, so that way I can fill in some of the white of the paper there myself. And that will help make this transition a little bit better. And I'm working backwards sometimes because I'm noticing I'm going a little bit darker occasionally, and so then I'm just trying to reintegrate my blend. Notice how much time this is taking, right? Art doesn't go fast, right? Art takes time if you really want to do it right. So again, just get used to slowing down and focusing. Put your phones away. If your phone's, lighten up at you all the time, you'll get distracted and you'll lose that focus. Because if you just stay focused here and really work on it, it will go faster than you think. I've been doing this now for, maybe 20 minutes. All three of these swatches, which really isn't that long. Might have been a little bit longer because I paused the video a couple times. But, I'm still probably only at, definitely not more than 30, so 20 to 25 minutes. And then if you add the mapping this whole thing out, that was maybe another 5 or 10. So, went pretty smooth. So now I can come in with my 2H here, and I can get these last very light values a little bit more filled in. I'm using very big oval shapes now just to speed it up. Notice I'm holding my pencil way out here too. When I want to do these light values, I really want to hold the pencil out and almost just let the weight of the pencil do the drawing, right? There's no pressing. It's just the weight of the pencil making the marks. And I might come here and do a little bit of horizontal application just to smooth it out a little bit. And I'm still holding my pencil way out here when I'm doing that. I know y'all can't see it because it's out of the frame, but I think that that is a good technique. And then I'll just let that feather right into my whites. So now I have a really good clean value transition all the way from 100 to 0 with a smooth blend in between. All right, folks. Hey, that's our value scales. I look forward to seeing yours.